up, everybody? Welcome on in. It's that time of the week. The Sooners on SI podcast here on a massive, never-ending week. If you see some tired eyes, some bags under the eyes, if you're watching us on YouTube, it's because the calendar is overflowing. We had Board of Regents stuff. We had massive press conferences in Norman previewing Oklahoma and Alabama. We have like 5,000 women's basketball and men's basketball games. Signing day is today, which I just forgot was a thing now that we're in the rev share, financial aid agreement era. All that and more rolling through. I'm Ryan Chapman here as always. We got Hoove, 918 Hoove, John Hoover, the man, the myth, the legend. How are you holding up? Because some of us are running around like crazy, just exhausted down here in the north area.
And we got a major road game coming up with 4 of us going to be in the car at some point. You're all coming up here, and we're going to launch from Tulsa. So, yeah, we only got 18 hours in the car in front of us. This makes for a short week, so let's get her done.
Let's get it done. Indeed, we got our man Carson Field, who was at McCaslin Fieldhouse last night. We'll hit all that a little bit later. Carson, how are you?
Doing great. Like you guys said, a little bit tiring this week. A lot of stuff going on, but that's just the beauty of this job. Very excited for Tuscaloosa. It's going to be fun.
Then the man we're leaving behind, we told him, sorry, dog, this car is only big enough for the one of us when it comes to Ryan's. Ryan Aber, my friend, you started your week off. Now, it's a little bit different for me. I have the quick turnaround, but you got the luxury of the 9:30 p.m. women's basketball Monday tip-off. Nothing sets a week back like a 9:30 Monday game.
Yeah, no kidding. But it was a fun game to watch, even though it didn't go OU's way there at the end. But got some flashes at least of Aaliyah Chavez and how good she can be. We got to see Lauren Betts versus Reagan Beers and all that stuff. And then, the Sooners get back home. We're talking on Wednesday afternoon. So they get back home Wednesday night for the first of a couple home games this week. So it should be a fun one.
Yeah, we got game against UMKC tonight. Field trip day on Friday where Ryan Aber will bring the earplugs and hope that Oklahoma gets to like 65 and hits a 3, as you've seen. And then the Hoops squads, Western Carolina on Sunday for the women, OU Nebraska.
You don't want them to hit a 2 at 65?
No, I don't. And if I were on the OSU beat, I would have advocated for J.C. Hoyt, who's done a great job, to be fired for burning a timeout when they get to 67 because that looked like absolute misery. But we'll hit all the hoops here at the end. Let's actually start with it's football, but it's not related to OU and Alabama. Let's start with the Board of Regents happenings of the week, and then we can work our way into Oklahoma and Alabama. Brady Trantham and I were hanging out at the Medical Center Library, or the library at the OU Health Science Center in OKC yesterday because it was Board of Regents time, and a couple of big-time athletics items were on the agenda. Let's start football, then we'll go baseball. Oklahoma approves the West Side Project, as we're just going to call it. Basically, big facelift to the West Side. Tons of suites going in, amenities, improvements, press box, all that fun stuff. Talking to Joe C. afterwards, it also allows Oklahoma to kind of evaluate how can Oklahoma's stadium become even more of an event stadium, not just for football, which is obviously massively important, but get that bad boy rolling. Construction scheduled to tentatively begin at the conclusion of the 2027 OU football season. It's going to be a project kind of like maybe not exactly like what you've seen at Vanderbilt and at Missouri. Those are construction projects that have gone on during the season and had cranes and stuff in one end zone, but this is not going to be just a one-off season thing. It's going to affect things for a little bit during the 28 season, but then it'll be all done, all shiny, all new. Hoove and Aber both, seeing as you guys have covered the majority of Joe Castiglione's tenure at Oklahoma. He's had the East Side Project with Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. He's had the South End Zone bowled in. Nowhere to run when you're surrounded by the best, and one of the lamest intro videos that Oklahoma's ever put out there. It also helped that they just weren't good that year. And then you have now the West Side, who I asked Joe C. about this. He was very adamant that I'm not going to talk about it, but Joe Harris talked about Joe Castiglione and kind of what he's done. This is going to be one of the lasting legacies, not just hiring Bob Stoops, bringing the football program back, but taking a historic stadium and modernizing it in a way that is not often a given around the country.
Has anybody seen renderings yet?
There are renderings. There will be new renderings, though. The renderings that were put out there when they adopted the master plan in 2014, it's not going to be too far away from that, but there are new renderings. They are just giving baseball some time to have its love with
Okay. And
baseball.
the follow-up question then is there an actual upper deck, or is what we're looking at right now going to be expanded out? Do we know what's going to happen to the parking garage?
My expectation, I don't know what's happened on the backside. My expectation is you're going to see a press box, upper deck, suites kind of in between the first and second level, and then some field level suites as well. That's my expectation on
Okay.
it. I've not seen the new renderings though, so
Yeah.
I just
Joe
know
also declined to talk about the capacity, the seating capacity. We don't know what that's going to be. He doesn't want to overshoot and have a 95,000, 100,000 seat stadium and have empty seats on lean years. We all know that. But there's also a 10,000, or there has been for the last 25 years, a 10,000. I don't know what the waiting list is now, but the waiting list for tickets has been in the 10,000 range for several years, 10,000, 12,000 even. So there's a demand for OU tickets as long as OU football is really good. If OU football is going 6-6, there's got to be a hesitancy to expand the seating, the capacity. So that's something that I'm sure that they're in high level meetings right now. Think about that. We want an SEC stadium, but we don't want any empty seats. How are they going to kind of balance that, knowing that this is going to be a 25-year looking down the road in the future? It'll be a 3 decade process.
Yeah, I think though when you look at the way that college sports is going, I think it's much more about the experience versus the experience for the fans who are there versus just the raw capacity numbers. Yes, hitting six digits is flashy. It draws headlines, things like that. But when you can charge a premium price for those suites, for the boxes, especially like the boxes that we've seen in the south end zone, things like that, I think the value of that goes up. There was a lot of consternation when they did some of those other projects about the seating capacity actually dipping down. It's not going to surprise me if it's not a jump or a big jump, but I think it's going to be much more about that fan experience and what the people who are in the stadium, the environment that they have, and also the selling point of for recruits. Hey, we can bring in all this money that's going to be funneled towards you, the student athlete. So it's a different world now. It's not just about raw numbers, but that'll be interesting to see how that ultimately shakes out.
Yeah, and I'll add this real quick too. Joe Castigliano and I had a conversation. I want to say it was around 2019, maybe 2018, where they had just they laid open plans to say here. It was 2016. He was like, "Here's what we're going to do with the Red Room. Here's what we're going to do with the player amenities, and here's what the new facilities." And I was like, "Joe, didn't you just redo the Red Room about 5 or 6 years ago?" And he was like, "Yeah, I did." And he was kind of angsty about was the future being, there were all these lawsuits in the pipeline at the time. The future was, hey, at some point we're going to start paying the players. At some point they're going to start earning their NIL stuff. This was just a little bit before NIL actually became a word. And he was really expressing some anxiety a little bit about, we've been building these fantastic palatial palaces for these student athletes for generations. Like we bring them on recruiting trips and say, look at our fancy stuff. Isn't that amazing? Don't you want to play here? And now it's about paying the players themselves. So they're knocking on doors, getting donations, right, from fans, and then they're having to raise ticket prices just because of the cost of living and everything else, right? But you're knocking on doors for donations for all these facilities. Now you don't get donations for facilities anymore. I mean, you do. We're getting ready to talk about one of them. But you get donations for NIL, and you get donations for revenue sharing. And what happened to all that money that was going to the facilities? Now there's like more spending, and athletic directors everywhere are going, dude, what do you want to give to the university? Do you want to give NIL for players? Do you want to give have your name on part of the stadium?
Well, I think it's also why we're going to a business model on the administrator role. I mean, we see what Randall Stevenson has done with the football program, and it'll be interesting to see how this athletic director search plays out, and ultimately what background that choice has. But it's certainly not going to surprise me if it either is Randall Stevenson
Yeah.
or if it's another guy with a business background, because you have to know how to manage all of those different pots in a way that you really didn't have to do before. Before it was just about facilities and paying coaches, and now it's about so much more.
Yeah, you're right. I'll be looking forward to seeing what Carson. Let's hear from you on this topic before I start going off on some tangent.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the final rendering looks like. I mean, they could go the approach of what we've seen from programs like, say, Baylor, just not necessarily add seats to the experience, but just make it so much nicer. And that's kind of the direction I see this fan base going, because like you guys mentioned, it's going to be hard to fill up that many seats. The metro area is not as huge as, say, Austin, Texas is. Bryan College Station being so close to Austin, Dallas, Houston, having three cities like that so close, like it's tangibly going to be harder to fill all 105, however many they decide to do in a stadium that big. So maybe they just go for a nicer fan experience. I mean, Owen Field is a great place to watch a college football place. I have been blessed to go to a lot of good stadiums, and OU's is right near the top. But if they made it even nicer, made it a little more 2025, I mean, you could see it becoming one of the more premier venues in the SEC, which that's a high bar to clear.
I'll tell you this: it's going to be first class. Whatever they do on the west side, press box, suites, all that stuff is going to be as good as anybody in the country. That's just OU's recent history.
Yeah, I was just thinking somewhere, probably in this room where I'm sitting, I've got the renderings from 2014 when they gave us a big packet of the master plan renderings when the east side started, or I guess was that the south end zone? I guess south end zone that started the first of a couple phases, 3 phases of that project. So I'll have to dig those out sometime soon. Should have done it this week to see what they thought it was then, and then be able to compare it to what this ultimately looks like now. But Hoove, let's just keep on the stadium renovation list. Also, a big announcement about baseball on Tuesday, as Ryan Chapman pointed out. We've seen the OU softball stadium obviously make a massive upgrade with their leap into Love's Field, but now baseball, not the same kind of jump, but certainly a significant step forward.
Yeah, you got to love the corporate dollars that Love's put up. I think a final figure round about $44 million. Brian Kimry and the Kimry family comes along from Bartlesville and says, here's another $15 million. They've already donated a ton of money. Well, now you've got the L. Dale Mitchell Park, the Dale, as they've been calling it in recent generations, is now going to be called the Kimry Family Baseball Stadium, baseball facility soon for something. So
Kimry Family Stadium.
Just stadium. So that's pretty cool because that thing has lagged and lagged and lagged. You guys saw what happened at Allie P. Reynolds Stadium in Stillwater, man. It was the word. I mean, I love a good old stadium. I'm one of those dudes that's, hey, let's go to the Polo Grounds in New York, right? I wish we could go back and see some of those old ones, but Allie P was a dump for about 20 years before they finally replaced it with O'Brien Stadium, and now it's one of the best in the country, right? Oh, it's so overdue at Oklahoma for the baseball facility to catch up, not be the best in the country, just catch up with everybody else. And they've done a good job of kind of piecemealing it here and there, taking what donations they could get and making it better. And Skip has done a great job keeping the baseball program good and relevant and making people want to donate. So shout out Skip. But boy, it has lagged behind. When you go to the SEC and you see some of those other stadiums, baseball stadiums, holy cow.
You and I have spent time up in Fayetteville.
Yep.
at Arkansas Stadium, which is, Baum Stadium is one of the palaces of college baseball. Suites all down the lines, down the first and third base line. We know about, Alex Box Stadium, obviously down in Baton Rouge. You think about Starkville and the facilities that they have there, and just on and on and on. Tennessee, and you just have to make a significant upgrade because, in the Big 12, they weren't the worst, probably. Certainly weren't the best, but they were at least in the same ballpark as most of them. But now that you make the jump to the SEC, there's no comparison. And we knew they would have to make an upgrade, but this is a very significant one.
And I find that it's an interesting juxtaposition because while there is stuff going into Kimry Family Stadium for the fans, the football renovations to me is all about how do you maximize your, first off, just modernize the West Side, but how do you maximize your bottom line as far as rev share, make as much money as possible off the suites that can go back in. It's something that Joe Harris talked about, President Joe Harris, in the Joe Giglione retirement press conference, right? That he came with this East Side plan. Joe Harris was like, this is never going to work, and it's paid for itself over and over again. For baseball, this is as much about the nuts and bolts of the performance center and all of the things. It's kind of an old school facilities project of Skip Johnson needs the guts underneath Kimray Family Stadium. He needs the new performance center. He needs the new hitting lab and all the technology to stay level with the rest of the SEC baseball programs. Because while David Boren was turning Oklahoma into a real estate project, doing all the housing halls, football got its due, but softball fell behind. Gym fell behind. Eldell has never been touched. You saw Love's Field. You saw the gymnastics facilities, stuff like that. It's almost like for facilities, Oklahoma outside of football has been cramming to try and catch up, and this is long overdue, especially for what Skip does. He's just an assembly line, a factory of MLB pitchers. They've come through and competed, getting to Omaha, all that stuff. It's long overdue for Skip and getting that together.
Cade Horton was robbed, by the way.
Well, I mean, don't be 37th in innings pitched, and that might help as well. But Norman Kidd, we love Cade Horton. But I think that this is like massive, like legitimately massive for the baseball program. I think that the stadium project for football is massive for modernizing the West Side. I don't know if we're going to see that have an impact on like the on-field product over the next 4 to 5 years. I think that this baseball thing is going to be massive, Carson, for just recruiting in the SEC and everything that Skip needs to do to keep up with the Joneses in the Premier Baseball Conference in America.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, like you guys said, wasn't necessarily a bad place to watch a game, a bad place to play a game, but you look at Duty Noble Field in Starkville, Olson Field in College Station, all of these, Baum Stadium in Fayetteville. I mean, all of these more or less cathedrals in college baseball, Oklahoma really was falling behind. And this is a program that baseball, I mean, like just about every sport, the SEC is dang good at baseball. And OU to level up with this competition in the SEC, all of these teams that are perennial Omaha travelers, I mean, they needed to match the competition, get up to the level of some of these programs that I just mentioned that have similarly, like OU has been in recent memory, making the national championship series a few years ago. I mean, it's about time that they got the facilities to match the potential, everything good that's happened in this program in the last decade or so. So, I mean, it's huge for the program trying to keep up with all of these other teams in the SEC that they've already been through it in the SEC. They've already had time to renovate their stadiums, level up to, okay, I need to be as good as this program, that program. It's big for the program.
And it'll be big going forward. It's a two-phase project for baseball, and this is basically phase one of the major facelift getting going.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. One of my favorite things about the renderings, and the outfield environment has been one that has grown around OU baseball during the Skip Johnson era. Obviously, that's a lot of times been outside of the gates. But the fact that it looks like the fence is going to be transparent, so you can have people sit behind that. They'll have to be inside the stadium, paying tickets for that. But I thought that was a nice addition to at least be able to keep up some of that same vibe in the new place.
should be really, really awesome once that gets fully rolling here. So excited for that. That'll cap off our Board of Regents fun happening that we had on Tuesday. More to come. The next step for both those, I think, is like officially rubber stamping the construction programs, all that stuff, or construction firms, projects for the football. Jokes de Leon said that you might see as that stuff gets approved, what they call it, I forget the exact word, but it's basically they have to do some work around the stadium just to prepare for the construction process that's going to happen post 2027. So you're not going to really
At
feel it.
risk, at risk construction management or something like that.
Yeah, it's basically they have to do some work on the outside to get everything ready for when post 2027 season the whole construction project starts in full swing. So should be good there, and it just kind of feels fitting that all of that stuff that Oklahoma feels like it needs to stay competing at the top comes this week when Oklahoma and Alabama are getting ready to square off in a massive college football game in Tuscaloosa. The second trip for Oklahoma as a program to Tuscaloosa. And as we saw with the CFP rankings last night, the Sooners sitting at 11, Alabama at 4. No major shocks. BYU loses, just gets slotted below Oklahoma. But there's a lot of chaos that could still happen. But right now, like if you had said hypothetically before the season, if Oklahoma goes 9-3 and those losses are to Texas, a top 10 Ole Miss, and at Alabama, that they might still have a shot with their resume, things like that. Well, the way that things are shaking out right now, the Sooners, as Brent Venables kind of said on the conference call today, instead of worrying about comparing resumes, just win and you're going to take care of itself. And if not, then you didn't win enough games. This is where it kind of starts, because if Oklahoma wins, John, they put themselves in fantastic position with a hurt Missouri team and an LSU team that might be in the wilderness in 2 weeks. We'll see. That would be the rest of the way there, but it starts with you got to get it done in Tuscaloosa against a very, very high-flying Alabama offense.
Yeah, and I think I saw on the reveal show or whatever they calling it last night that Heather, I think it was Heather Dinich that said, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, that said this is like a play-in game for Oklahoma, or has the potential to be like a play-in game for Oklahoma. If they win this game, they're in. If they lose this one and finish 9-3, they're pretty much eliminated. And I know she knows what she's talking about. She's been dealing with the playoff selection committee since it started in 2014, and she's absolutely the authority. But think about it, guys: a 9-win, 9-3 Oklahoma team with let's just call it what it is, the 3 quality losses that they have. That would be 3 top 10 losses. I think they'll be very forgiving of those 3 top 10 losses. I think they would, and the committee chair last night talked about. John Mateer on the press conference talked about, yeah, we knew that his thumb was hurt and that he had surgery against Texas. And one of the reasons they lost to Texas was because their quarterback was out. Not out, but limited. He understood, and the committee is aware of these things. I think there's a momentum building for an Oklahoma finishing middle of the pack in the SEC, upper middle of the pack at 9-3 to get in the playoff. I really do. So I don't think this is necessarily an elimination game per se for Oklahoma. If they win and get to, are able to sustain that and get to 10-2, they're in lock, stock, and barrel. I mean, there's no debate. But at 9-3, I think it becomes an interesting. You start comparing everybody's resumes.
Yeah, I have a great respect for Heather Dinich. She does a great job. But just got on the ESPN playoff predictor, which is fun to mess around with. And you type in OU losing to Alabama this weekend and then beating Missouri and LSU. What do you think their chances are of still making the playoff according to that predictor?
High 30s?
Chapman,
I have to absolve myself because I know that there's a weird quirk in the playoff predictor that is interesting, actually.
45?
You're really close. 44%.
Wow.
Says the playoff predictor.
It's pretty strong.
I'm not saying, that if they win this week, they're all right and they can just cruise through those last couple weeks. And if they win those, they're definitely in. But the way that this season is shaping up, the way that OU's schedule has shaped up, the way that, the ACC hasn't done what, some of us thought they might before the season. Miami's had its struggles. Who makes it out of the ACC? Do they even make it? Are they one of the 6? That finishes up there, especially if Duke were to win that conference. Who the group of 5 teams are. So it's fascinating that percentage is still that high. in my mind, it's not quite that high. I wouldn't put it that high, but there's at least a good shot that this is the year that the three-loss team finally breaks through. I say finally breaks through.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we're projecting as much as we can to the end of the season. And here's the thing, guys. It's coming up on middle of November. We have had almost zero chaos yet. College football thrives on chaos, is born in the chaos, and we've had nothing. Last week, Oklahoma was at 12. 10 of the 12 teams in front of them won. Nothing happened. The one that didn't lost, and they jumped them, and the other one didn't play. So that's something that, hey, guys, it's coming. The snowstorm, winter is coming, so buckle up.
I think this is the lull. There's some chaos early in the season. We saw Florida State beat Alabama and then fall off the face of the earth. We saw what happened with Penn State. I mean, heck, LSU.
That was weird.
Some of these other programs. I think a lot of the chaos has already happened, but it's not over. It will definitely kick back up again here over the next few weeks. It always does.
It's Championship November.
Championship November in Los Angeles. Carson, are you familiar with Championship November?
I'm not.
Good. Don't worry about it. I don't know. And Carson, I want you to know this. I am way more pessimistic because I think Michigan's going to get clubbed by Ohio State. If Tennessee loses to Vandy, Oklahoma could finish with one ranked win at 9-3. That's not a resume to get into the college football playoff unless everybody else behind them loses, which if BYU wins out the rest of the regular season, I think Tech and BYU will get in. In a weird way, if Cincinnati beats BYU and Utah doesn't have to play the Big 12 championship game, that might even be better for Utah. I think that you're just going to get a ACC team, a Group of 5 team, not have to worry too much about that. It just becomes if Vanderbilt beats Tennessee, then everything hurts Oklahoma's resume, maybe vaults Vanderbilt. I think that maybe the easiest thing, Carson, is you just go win this week. Not easy, but go win this week and take it out of the hands of a committee.
100%, and I agree with you in the sense that the wins, might not age like we thought they would beginning of the year. Auburn's kind of disappointing this year. I think they're still a very talented team, but the wins have not come easily for them. Michigan, up and down, good defense, offense still very inconsistent. Tennessee, that's a high-flying team, but they're still a good team. You kind of have to, I think, to a degree, take the wins when you got them, because Tennessee at the time that OU played them, I think most people would argue they were around 15th in the nation. It's a good football team in Knoxville, no less. But I think that 44% number that Aber threw out there from the predictor, I think that number would be significantly higher if, say, Oklahoma beat Texas, lost to South Carolina. Just that head-to-head loss against Texas, who, granted, they still have Georgia and A&M on their schedule. Those are two very losable games the way those teams are playing right now. But if those teams, OU and Texas, finish 9-3, Texas has that head-to-head nod over the Sooners, it could be massive. It could be the difference between in and out in this year's playoff bubble. Who knows if that'll be the case? Maybe there's enough chaos that both make the playoff. Maybe there's bid stealers from the Big 12 who take both team spots. But that could be the thing that X's OU from the playoff, and I know that's a situation they don't want to be in. So, it really does come down to winning this week, but also not overlooking LSU's still dang talented. Missouri's defense is still very good. They made A&M they made them pull out a lot of tricks, which I know a lot of people didn't necessarily expect. That defense, even without Bo Pribula on offense, that team can still play. So win this week and then don't sleepwalk in your last two. And that's what you got to do.
Do that. Sooners get to slow down Ty Simpson. That's been a huge thing for Alabama, reeling off these 8 straight wins, which of course included the 5 million ranked wins in a row that became tied an SC record, all that fun stuff. 21 touchdowns, 1 interception for Ty Simpson. He's been incredibly efficient, which is made up for the fact that Alabama struggled running the football. And Wednesday evening, we'll get our first little glimpse of what equipment Oklahoma's going to have at its disposal. We talked to Gentry Williams on Monday. Gentry was available at Tennessee, didn't play, but felt like that was he could go if you really had to have him, but didn't have to. He's obviously preparing mentally to get ready for this one. We talked to Kobe McKenzie yesterday on radio, and he basically said, good to go, preparing to make that thing happen. So it's really all about R. Mason Thomas and the quad injury, as Brent Venables had labeled it, against Tennessee. Not really a ton of on-field work last week during the bye week to really gauge off of that. I think we might be, boys, in a pretty similar spot with R. Mason that we were with Kobe in Knoxville, which is binoculars, train on R. Mason during warmups. How's he feeling? Stuff like that. Aber, we'll get to you in here in a second because I know you wrote the story just about, hey, without R. Mason Thomas, what is that going to be? But R. Mason, no R. Mason. The name of the game here is going to be, as much as I think we like the Oklahoma secondary, you got to get pressure on Ty Simpson, because if you don't get that pressure, this secondary, it's not an OU secondary thing. There's not many secondaries that are going to be able to cover Bernard and Ryan Williams and every weapon Alabama has at its disposal for 5, 6, 7 seconds if the defensive line isn't closing down on the Alabama quarterback.
So Alabama's passing game is probably equivalent, slightly better, certainly more efficient, more safe with the football than anybody Oklahoma's faced this year, including Ole Miss. Ole Miss had a good time throwing the football against Oklahoma. That's been, defensive wise, that's been kind of their Achilles heel, is the intermediate stuff over the middle. We've seen the tight ends expose this defense now for a couple of years. And we've seen some guys go down the sidelines, with the opportunity to catch footballs. I'm talking deep balls. That's something Alabama thrives on. Alabama absolutely offensively rides that. And so for that to be Oklahoma's weakness and Alabama's strength, that's not a particularly good matchup. And what you're saying is 100% right. You've got to come up with ways to generate pressure, confuse Ty Simpson, maybe make him hold on to the football just a little bit longer, get a little bit closer to that guy, get a little bit better coverage, maybe grab the jersey a little bit before he gets out of his break. You know what I'm saying? Get creative with how you cover guys, because if he's able to drop back, throw in rhythm, it's going to be a long, long day for the OU secondary.
Aber, if it's no R. Mason, you got Marvin Jones Jr., Taylor Wine, guys that have been steady contributors, but saw Danny Okoye play a larger load of snaps. PJ had a massive tackle for loss against Tennessee that led to one of those 3-and-outs where Oklahoma really asserted itself in the second half. What kind of shape is Oklahoma going to be in if R. Mason can't give it a go, or if he's at like 50% and is on kind of like a snap count type thing?
Yeah, let's not, kid ourselves that OU is just going to be absolutely fine if R. Mason Thomas isn't in there. He's one of 17 Bednarik Award semifinalists. He's one of the best pass rushers in the country. The stats bear that out. The PFF grades bear that out. And you need him against an offense as dynamic as Alabama's. That said, OU's finally got a decent amount of depth at defensive end, and we knew that would be a position of strength with R. Mason Thomas, with Marvin Jones Jr. Taylor Wine has been, one of the surprises of this defense. You can sort of say, they've got surprises sort of at every level with, Cortland Guillory, with Owen Heineke as well. But, Taylor Wine's right up there with his progression this year. He's been fantastic. But the steps that Danny Okoye and PJ Adebawore have taken over these last few weeks, their snap numbers aren't significantly higher. In some cases, aren't higher at all, but they're being much more efficient and much more impactful in those snaps. It's not just going out there and giving R. Mason Thomas and Taylor Wine a break. It's going out there and making plays. And we saw that against Tennessee with both of them. Okoye had the big sack. Adebawore had the massive tackle for loss right after R. Mason Thomas's long return that helped hold Tennessee to a field goal and helped OU, sort of keep some sense of momentum after that happened. And so it won't be disastrous if R. Mason Thomas can't go or isn't 100%. But certainly they would be much better off if he's able to go.
And Carson, there's also this bit too, regardless of who's in there, who's not in there. What was the biggest difference between the first half against Tennessee as opposed to the third quarter against Texas or the first half against Ole Miss? Well, You start counting the takeaways, 3 of those for Oklahoma's defense, all resulting in massive, massive swings, whether it be points, keeping points off the board, getting the offense a short field when it was still trying to find its footing. That's going to be massive against an Alabama team that's one of the best in the country at taking the ball away and then not giving it back when they do have that.
It is, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, Ty Simpson, from what I've gotten to see out of him, is one of the cleanest players out there, one of the smartest players, and he's just, I'd call him a game manager, but I feel like that's kind of an insult to the way he plays. He is a damn good quarterback, and he takes care of the ball, has really good weapons around him, so that's not going to be easy. But I think a key to maybe getting even 1 or 2 of those would loom large in a game like this for OU's chances. The key to that is getting to Ty Simpson as quick as you can. I thought the pass rush was much better against Tennessee than it was against Ole Miss. They really made Joey Aguilar uncomfortable. Trinidad Chambliss made him uncomfortable a few times, but he also escaped plenty of times with his legs, found a fast receiver in the inside, did a lot more to damage this defense, and Alabama has that kind of players at its disposal. Getting a little more pressure on him quicker maybe makes reads a little bit more uncomfortable, whether it's a fumble, a pick. Getting even 1 or 2 of those would be massive against an offense that really does take care of the ball.
Here's your quick statistical update since we went down that path. Tennessee is second in the country right now in passing yards per game, 329. That's Tennessee. Ole Miss is 7th at 305. Alabama, way, way, way down there at 13th. 291 yards per game. And you remember the statistics in those games. Chambliss threw for 315 and Joey Aguilar threw for 393. So Oklahoma's got to have a game where they're either taking the football away from the quarterback in one way or another, getting pass rush on him or picking those balls off, or, yeah, it's going to be tough.
The other bit, too, is something Oklahoma's been really good at for the most part this year. We saw that against Tennessee, especially after their first touchdown drive. Oklahoma and Alabama, 2 of the most efficient red zone offenses in the country. The key in games like this is it measures red zone scoring. Touchdowns and field goals obviously matter a great deal. LSU, I thought, on Saturday did a pretty good job of putting the Band-Aid on and trying to force some field goals as opposed to just letting Alabama walk into the end zone. Now, they had a quarterback change. They were going through all of it on offense and weren't able to really make Alabama pay for it, despite the fact that we talk about turnovers. They'd gotten a fumble near midfield, a chance to make it 17 to, what would that have been, 17 to 13. And then all of a sudden you're going, oh my gosh, could this have been a football game? Instead, LSU just gets the field goal. Alabama's able to extend back that way. That's going to be the some of the big moments of when you don't get a turnover. It's not going to be a day where suddenly you force 17 punts and all this stuff. It's going to be, hey, Alabama gets a big play. Can you rally and hold for a field goal as opposed to a touchdown, which this Oklahoma defense has been pretty good about most of the season. Then on the flip side, you got to have your offense convert, and that's going to be a lot on John Mateer, and it kind of brings us all the way back around to one of the big questions coming out of Tennessee. Whether you look at that 3rd and 16 run where Mateer picked up 21 yards, whether you look at the throw to Satania on the sideline, whichever moment you believe was kind of the turning point for John Mateer in that football game up until he decided to throw an interception with 4:15 left. If you can get that version of John Mateer for at least 3 quarters, pair that with a rushing attack, with all the offensive line changes that that have been well documented, all the Xavier Robinson for a guy who's had some success against Alabama in his recent past, that right there, John, is the formula. It just becomes, do you believe we're going to get that version of John Mateer on Saturday night, or I guess Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, it's there's a lot to unpack there, obviously. How much of what John Mateer does, how much of his success on Saturday is going to be tied to Xavier Robinson in the running game, and how much of that is going to be tied to the continued progress of the offensive line and their ability to fire off the ball, follow that EPL example, and go hit somebody and knock the hell out of somebody and move them out of the way. Because the offensive line, the first 5, 6, 7 games of the season didn't do that. We saw that the last time they played against Tennessee. We saw that a couple of times the game before that. And so if those things come together and you don't have receivers dropping the football or guys catching the ball like this and it pops up when the DB is reaching around and comes up into the air and it's an interception. If you don't have that and you don't have the offensive coordinator making boneheaded calls in wrong situations, then John Mateer can have a very successful day against this Alabama secondary. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I think John Mateer, I know Brent Venables talked about this on the SEC's teleconference this morning, that he's just getting more and more comfortable, just progressing better. I know Mateer has told us so many times that it's not his hand's not bugging him, that's not an issue, and that's admirable, but it's hard to believe at the same time. It's hard to imagine that a surgery that major, an injury that severe, wouldn't have any sort of rust, any pain still, that he'd be able to be accurate first time out. And Venables pretty much said, yeah, injuries like that are going to take their time. You've seen that progression. He's had his bad throws, he's had his good throws. But he also said John Mateer's been efficient, essentially highlighting the second half against Tennessee. Don't know if you'd say he won them the game, but him being good enough was huge in the second half, really helped them stay in front, aside from that late pick, which I attribute that more to bad play calling than bad quarterback play. But Mateer's just getting more and more comfortable. You're seeing that. I felt like Ole Miss was a step in the wrong direction, Tennessee a step in the right direction. Alabama's defense, though, as we know, no slouch. It's not going to be easy, hostile environment. But Mateer at least should have a little confidence doing what he did against Tennessee. Not the best defense, but an incredibly hostile environment, a gotta have it game. That's got to give him at least a little bit of a mental boost this week.
Aber, am I oversimplifying? And the answer is always yes. I'm a dumb person. I try to make things simple. Am I oversimplifying it and saying, like, simply put, if Oklahoma can at least break even at worst on turnover margin and win the time of possession battle, something they've not been spectacular at, that to me are the two things that I'm going to be looking at. If they do those two things, I think they have a real shot. If they end up way underwater in time of possession or certainly underwater in the turnover battle, that's where I think the chances to go to Tuscaloosa and win a big time game really start to, the percentages I would start tanking if they lose either one of those, especially in a significant way.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes. The answer is it's a bit of an oversimplification, but there's also plenty of validity to it. I mean, that's why I think Xavier Robinson is so big in this game, because we saw the physicality that he brought last year against Alabama and had a lot of success there. Had his first 2-touchdown game. We've seen what he's brought the last few games, the explosiveness there. He's got to bring that, and he's got to be able to hold on to the ball because Alabama forces a lot of fumbles. I mean, you talk about Ty Simpson and the way he's managed the game. Their defense has also forced a lot of turnovers on the other end. I mean, you just look, they forced, 6 fumbles combined over the last 4 games there. They're getting hats on the football and making those things pop out. We've seen OU struggle with that at times, but if Xavier Robinson can hold on to the football and be able to make some of those plays and be able to eat up the clock like you talked about, I think that goes a long way toward giving the Sooners the best chance to pull off what would be an upset down at Bryant-Denny.
It's one of those things that's like it's the oversimplification, but it goes hand in hand, right? Because why would they win the time of possession? Well, Xavier Robinson, John Mateer, they're able to not necessarily, you don't need them to run for 350 yards or something like that, but you need them to do what we saw against Michigan, do what we saw against Auburn at points, and do what we saw certainly in the second half against Tennessee. You don't have to put 45 on the board. You just have to put together 3 or 4 really good drives, and those 3 or 4 really good drives have to come at the right time, synced up with Oklahoma's defense, which is something we've certainly seen happen before. And then there's some other good news that happened this week. I was perusing the social media across the bye week. I was double, triple checking, doing the hard-hitting work that we do here at Sooners on SI. I saw no evidence of Tate Sandale kicking a burrito. I saw no evidence of him kicking any other foodstuffs, actually. He was holding for people at an NIL event, but I think that means that Tate Sandale Weapon, who currently is number 1 in the country in points added over replacement for place kickers in college football, think that Oklahoma's going to have that. And if you have that, it's an Alabama team that just doesn't return a ton of kicks. The offense is so good, it's kind of like the Lincoln Riley thing. Like, no need to risk a fumble here. We'll just take the field position, whatever it is. As long as it's not in the tank, you're going to be in a good spot. And that's where Oklahoma's defense kind of has to go to work, Hoove.
Grows up, grows up, grows up. Right, Carson?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's a big weapon. You put the words on it. One of our most maybe popular stories this fall has been a story that Ryan wrote that Oklahoma is developing a new weapon, and I think it was for the Red River rivalry. And everybody clicked on it and said, "What the heck?" And it was about the kicker, and everybody's like, "That's clickbait. What are you doing, making us click on a story about a new weapon?" Well, guess what, guys? The Oklahoma kicker is actually a weapon. Once you cross midfield, the Sooners can pretty much put 3 points on the scoreboard, minimum 3 points on the scoreboard. So he's been fantastic, and he's just a reflection of the improved special teams play since, I don't know, a guy by the name of Jay Nunez went to where? Alabama? Is that right? Is this the Jay Nunez revenge game, sort of? No. Well, yeah, it is.
I do have a very important question for all of you. We have two things at work here, okay? We're getting into like X Factor territory. On the Alabama side of it, it's the Alabama revenge game, blah, 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 blah. Oklahoma won last year. That's actually terrible. Motivation, because it's a top 11 matchup.
Well, but, hey, when we're talking about an Alabama loss, remember, Ryan, they weren't motivated.
They didn't want to be there. That's true. That's right. We've heard that a couple of times. But it's the Alabama revenge game narrative. Well, there was something on Monday night that Oklahoma players latched onto that I did not see coming whatsoever. I know Carson was in the middle of a lot of these scrums. It has been pointed out multiple times to Oklahoma players that the Sooners were selected for homecoming this week. You don't put Oklahoma as your homecoming, a lesson that Kansas learned like 10 years ago. An Alabama team that has not played back-to-back road games, will not play back-to-back road games until they get to, or back-to-back games outside of Bryant-Denny until they get to SC Championship, Conference Playoff, all that fun stuff. But which dark magic voodoo is more impactful? Aber, will start with you. Scheduling Oklahoma for homecoming or Alabama revenge game the next year?
You know, I was sort of interested to hear the comments from Alabama about, what Kalen DeBoer said about, making a sort of a big deal, saying, hey, they should remember that game last year and making it more of that revenge type of storyline. We know Brent Venable sort of, downplayed it, but that's the job that, that's what he does. But fascinating to hear that OU is a homecoming game, not something that happens very often, but there's only a few schools that can do that, and Alabama is one that I would imagine they it matters to them more about where the date of the game is on the schedule rather than who their opponent is. You're not going to do their November, the typical November FCS game in the SEC, which OU does not have this year. Alabama has next week, actually, against Eastern Illinois. When you're Alabama, that doesn't really bring a lot of juice. But when Oklahoma comes for the second time ever to Bryant-Denny, that does bring some juice. Not that you need it in Tuscaloosa, but I think it's one of those things that, hey, it's fun to talk about. But, Alabama does what Alabama wants.
Yeah, I think maybe to an extent the players care about the revenge game aspect, but it's a different season, a lot of new pieces. I mean, different quarterback for the Crimson Tide. I think the fan base really does care about that kind of stuff, though, knowing that that was not a great Oklahoma team. That was their first year in the league, and they're 1-0 against Alabama as SEC.
Yeah, and it kept them out of the playoff.
Kept them out of the playoff. Another huge point. So, I mean, considering what happened, that was the Sugar Bowl that OU beat Bama in early 2010s, right? Yeah, considering
yes, it was the most confounding game I have ever covered.
Okay,
the Trevor Knight game.
Yeah, Trevor Knight, that is right. But yeah, just based on the recent history with how dominant Bama has been against almost every program, not necessarily having that same success against OU, maybe that's something for the fan base to be more motivated. I know that I've never been to Bryant-Denny, but I've heard Bryant-Denny has a tendency to be loud when it needs to be loud and kind of settle down at the not as important games against, say, Kentucky, in past years Vanderbilt. I don't think there's going to be any of that against Oklahoma, even though it's not a night game. I think the fans are going to be out in full force. This Alabama team's been one of the best in college football since that opening loss to Florida State. There's a lot for them to cheer for, a lot for them to just bring that energy, and I think last year's result does at least play a decent role with the fan base.
Baker Mayfield had no business coming to Oklahoma, did he, after that Trevor Knight game? What was he thinking? Why would you come from transfer as a walk-on from Texas Tech to Oklahoma? What the heck are you thinking, Baker? Oh, wait, I'm hearing that it actually worked out well for him.
Yeah, I think it worked out all right for him. But I do remember being like, what the heck is this guy doing? He played as a freshman at Tech. There's plenty of places he could go and be guaranteed to play somewhere.
Yeah.
And he comes to Oklahoma. You know, at the time, we didn't know about his backstory as growing up as an OU fan and the connection with his family, with, some of the assistants, former assistants at OU. But just the wildest game I've ever covered, because it just sort of came out of nowhere. You're like, oh my gosh, what is Trevor Knight doing out here? You got, what is it? Eric Stryker, Frank Shannon, those guys doing things all over the place.
Geno Grissom.
And Geno Grissom. That's who
Colton Bester. Come on now.
Yeah, it was just absolute madness. And, we heard every excuse in the book from the Alabama folks after that one, but certainly turned out to be just one of the giant sort of blips on the radar, in someone's career, to have, Trevor Knight do what he did in that game, threw for almost 350 yards, just an incredible one. And it wasn't, particularly close. 45-31 was the final, but it didn't even feel that close, even with OU having to score a late touchdown to stretch it out like that.
Yeah, quick rabbit hole for you, Chapman. Think about what football would look like right now if Bob Stoops hadn't fired Josh Heupel, a couple of years before, brought in Lincoln Riley, right? And Riley Baker decides to go to Oklahoma. They get together. Kyler comes to Oklahoma. That produces Jalen Hurts. I mean, think about what OU football might be right now if, of all things, head coach Josh or offensive coordinator Josh Heupel, or if they'd had enough success for Bob to hand it off to Josh like he handed it off to Lincoln. Wow, it's kind of mind-blowing to think where OU would be.
We've missed the biggest talking point from the whole game. How did Doug Nussmeier not realize Derrick Henry's an alien? No one can tackle him. Hand Derrick Henry the ball over and over and over. I don't care how far behind you are. But I guess
8 carries.
Yeah, it's. He should be banned from football for life just for that. It is as much as it could be a play-in game, stuff like that. I think Oklahoma fans would like this to be firmly classified as regular season game. No one talk about it as a play-in game. Because the Alabama Crimson Tide have never beat Oklahoma in a regular season game. That's not happened. A home victory in the early 2000s, then obviously last year in Norman. Sooners 3-0 in the regular season against the Crimson Tide. Saturday, 2:30. Carson and I will be in the house. Carson, if you do not come back with a pristine video of Dixieland Delight, no one around here is going to be upset, but I'll be sad. I'll be a little sad because... Sure.
We also need press box video of Chapman and Hoover singing it, when they play it.
I had to blow up my Monday producer on the radio this week because he didn't know that what Dixieland Delight was. He's an NBA guy. He played a little bit of it, and as Eddie and I were ready for the call and response, he potted it down. I was like, Drake, this is the point. The whole point is that we spend our last dollar on beer. That's what we do. Anyway, I digress. 2:30. I know. Scout the dog who's under me. Sorry for my absence earlier. She is thrown up all over my apartment, so that's great. Good for that. But
Chapman needs new shoes now.
Before I get to cleaning up things, we have plenty more to get to. Let's start on Porter Moser's half of the Lloyd Noble Center. Saturday night against Gonzaga. That did not go well. Oklahoma got out-rebounded, outplayed, all that stuff. Tuesday night, I think the more important result was not the McCaslin game, but the fact that Gonzaga did the exact same thing to Creighton as far as beating them around. So this may be the rare Porter Moser non-conference experience where the team he plays actually gets better and better and better throughout the year, which makes that look better. But Carson, what'd you make of Oklahoma's response on Tuesday in the McCaslin game? A weird game. I didn't get to take in much of it, but it didn't sound like it looked as good as maybe the box score looked after the game.
Yeah, no, it wasn't sexy. They couldn't firmly run away from Arkansas Pine Bluff until the last few minutes. First half really struggled in the front court, which is obviously what we saw from the Sooners against Gonzaga. It was the same thing as we saw in the first game against St. Francis in the first half. They turned it around in the second half of that game. And there was a second half turnaround. It wasn't as drastic as that one against St. Francis, but they played better ball. The three-pointers were hitting. They shot better. They weren't allowing as many easy buckets in the paint, because it's one thing to give up buckets in the paint against a team like Gonzaga that has some really quality big men. You see that happening against Arkansas Pine Bluff, and you get a little bit worried. Arkansas Pine Bluff, they're now 0-4. I believe they started the year second to last in the nation in the net rankings. So that's not a good basketball team. But I mean, it's a weird thing in the sense that OU played a very similar game last year against Alcorn State at McCaslin Fieldhouse. Alcorn State was also really bad last year. And that game, it took OU a while last year as well. So maybe there's just something weird with McCaslin. Maybe it's just a different backdrop. Who knows? But it was not that pretty of a game. I thought Nigel Pack was really good. Tay Davis did have 11 offensive boards, which is really dang good. So you did see a lot of contributions from different pieces. I think part of it's also playing a lot of guys. They went 10 deep yesterday, and against a team like Arkansas Pine Bluff, sure, it wasn't pretty, but the game was never in doubt at the same time. There was never really a doubt that OU would win. So it did give Moser a lot of opportunities to play different players in a lot of different spots. Seeing guys like Kowal Atak, he got some more minutes yesterday. Kai Rogers, he played sparingly against Gonzaga. He was in a lot more situations last night, and even if he didn't light up the stat sheet, he looked the part, and he looks like he's going to be a big piece for the Sooners. So just giving a lot of guys opportunities yesterday, I think that's the bigger takeaway than a not so pretty game.
Shout out Reed Lovelace.
Yep.
Walk on, and Ross, our very own Ross Lovelace's little brother. So yeah, keep firing. Hey, do you think the slow starts could be a sign of just so many newcomers not really sure of each other? You need a half to actually get going.
I think that plays a role for sure. I mean, last year was a pretty reloaded team. This is a very reloaded team, just with so many different guys in both the backcourt and the front court. I think that definitely plays a role. At some point, you've got to figure that out, though. You can't be starting slow against, I mean, even Nebraska this coming Saturday. By the time they play more of these really good basketball teams, you can't afford those slow starts. You saw that happen against Gonzaga. But like, to your point, yes, I think the newness does play a factor in it, but it's something they've got to shore up quickly.
Something too, Pine Bluff did come into McCaslin and shoot the lights out 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever that was, 2 McCaslin games ago. So I think that's a situation where Pine Bluff is very, very comfortable in those spots. Something else that did happen over the past week, Alec Blair, formerly of Two Sport fame from Oklahoma, playing baseball and basketball. He, after game 1, stepped away from the basketball program, wants to focus on baseball. Porter talked about, like, obviously it's not optimal, but it's not like he quit on Oklahoma. He's still a Sooner. And just talking to Skip Johnson today on radio, Skip waxed poetic about Alec Blair and talked about he had that had a bunch of doubles in their kind of fall scrimmage against Texas Tech, a guy that's going to be, sounds like Oklahoma's everyday center fielder, and someone that Skip believes has like first round MLB draft potential. So one of those things that sucks from Porter, but I don't know truly how much Blair was going to factor into the plans for Oklahoma basketball, and knowing how much he's going to factor in and how his future in baseball lies ahead. That is something that happened this week, but I don't think it's going to have a huge impact on the season for the Sooners. Like Carson said, they'll be back in action on Saturday, taking on Nebraska in a Dakota somewhere. I don't remember which one. South Dakota. South?
Yep.
Nailed it. Boom. 50-50. Never fails. That's for the men. The women had their own marquee game on Monday night. Aber, you were the one tasked with staying up and writing that. I made it until UCLA made their run at the very end of the third quarter to extend that thing back out. And I said, peace. I have to be on radio early in the morning. It was a weird one, though, right? Chavez goes out early with the 2 fouls, comes back in. It was the Zaya Van show. And for me, we'll talk about it, but the Beatrice Colton first half minutes of going to war with Lauren Betts, I thought, well, this is going to end poorly, and it did not for the first half at least.
Yeah, I think that was certainly encouraging. Not that all the minutes went great when Reagan Beers was off the floor, but the fact that Beatrice Culleton was able to give them that, I think the announcers went a little bit overboard on how great that Beatrice Culleton mid-range jumper was that she hit. But there were some good things there. I think Zaya Van offensively, you see what she's becoming. There still needs to be a significant step, I think, on the defensive end. I think that's where they lost out a little bit when Chavez was off the floor and helped lead to that disparity there. But I think this was a good experience for Oklahoma, for Aaliyah Chavez in particular, to play a team like UCLA that has all of the talent. Lauren Betts, everybody else. Gianna Neepkins had a fantastic game for the Bruins as well. But this is one, even though it didn't go their way, that you can see can help them build for things that they might face in March. This is in a building that they might be playing in. It's one of two regional sites this year in the NCAA women's tournament. But I think if Aaliyah Chavez becomes the player that a lot of people expect her to be as quickly, I think this can be a turning point because you just have to go through it to be able to understand the difference in the way teams are going to guard you in high school versus the way teams are going to guard her at this level, especially when they're playing high level opponents that they'll face quite a bit throughout the SEC schedule. And even though the shooting numbers weren't great, Chavez, she improved a little bit there at the end, finished 4 of 16, but I think it was like 2 of 13, 2 of 14 to start off with. Even with that, you could see the playmaking abilities that she had with the near buzzer beater pass underneath the bucket to Sahara Williams for a pull-up at the buzzer. So at least some good things to take away from it, but it'll be interesting to see how things sort of mold here over the next 3 weeks as OU doesn't face a game where they should be severely tested in until they face NC State here in early December.
Hey, Aber, let me ask you a quick question. Lauren Betts, probably the best post player that Reagan Beers will see this year, maybe, probably, likely.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the best defensive post player.
Yeah, and so their history together, kind of best friends, junior high and rivals in high school and stuff, their history together, were you a little surprised that Reagan Beers didn't have more for her? Like what she finished with, like 7 and 10 or something like that? Like if that had been a regular player, she would have had 28 and 16, right? But because it was Betts.
Yeah, I think, and well, the foul trouble certainly played a big role into that. Reagan Beers' minutes were limited, especially in the first half with that. But you look at the other side. I mean, Lauren Betts is a fantastic defensive player. There's a reason why she was the National Defensive Player of the Year last year. Reagan Beers isn't going to face a defensive player like that in the post the rest of the season. I did think it was interesting, though, that OU was able to turn Betts over. I think 7 turnovers for Lauren Betts, a career high for her, and she's had some, fantastic games, obviously. So, maybe a little bit surprising that Reagan Beers didn't do more offensively in that game, but she's going to have plenty of chances. I think the big thing is that when they face a post player that can at least hang with Reagan Beers, they've got to be able to hit the shots, and they
Yep.
weren't able to hit the shots consistently or get the stops consistently to be in that game in the last few minutes.
Yeah, and that's a good observation. The fact that she was not able to. I think this is an opportunity for her to look back on that game and her history with Lauren Betts and say, "Here's how I can grow my game. Here's how I can be better in the NCAA tournament or in the SEC in the future by going up and doing these other things against big post play or really good post defenders." But you're right. Hit the shots takes care of everything.
Hit the shots and maintain the same level of turnovers, which was not a lot for Oklahoma too.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean they only had 9 turnovers, their fewest in 2 seasons. So that was a positive, but not enough positives for Jenny Baranczyk. And something tells me she would trade some of those turnovers for some playmaking and significant buckets the other way.
The biggest thing, and we can close here on the women's basketball. I just thought that Jenna Neepkins, who is someone that OU and UCLA were basically heads up for in the transfer portal, on a Monday night in November, she was the difference. When Oklahoma did a really good job, I thought, on Kiki Rice, Gabriela Jaquez was good early, but kind of I think Oklahoma was better on her as the game went on. I think you saw that for UCLA, what they were able to do, their addition was a big-time veteran. Oklahoma's big addition was a true freshman. And I think that's what's kind of, in a weird way, I know they didn't win the game, encouraging is that the Aaliyah Chavez you're going to see in March, the Keziah Lofton you're going to see in March, the continued growth of Zaya Van that you're going to see from here to March, I think that's the exciting journey that this Oklahoma team is going to be on. And it'll all change over next year. Once you graduate out Verhulst and Beers, it no longer is like blending the old and the new, and it's about kind of a very, very different looking Oklahoma team. But Ryan, this is kind of the thing I'm excited about tracking throughout this is how quickly can they make those steps forward between now and SEC play, because that'll be the difference. If they make those steps forward, they just showed you that's one of the nation's best. That's a Final Four type matchup type situation. They held up pretty darn well for it to be game 2.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think this is a significant building block. And even though it didn't go OU's way, there are plenty that they can take out of this game and use for improvement. And we've seen Jenny Baranczyk do a really good job of getting her teams there. I mean, you think about the team that lost to Southern a couple of years ago and then winds up putting that fantastic run together in their final season in the Big 12. Everything that they did last year as it built toward that Sweet 16 run. This is something that Jenny Baranczyk does a great job with. And it'll just be fascinating to see how she's able to navigate that and how different this team is. I mean, you think, and not that, everything's lined up where they'll certainly wind up playing UCLA down the road. But, I think about that 2016 OU Final Four team that, beat the brakes off of Villanova in Hawaii, I believe, in non-conference play. And then Villanova got so much better as the year went on. They were rolling and were able to win that game in the Final Four. Again, not saying that that's what happened, but we've seen examples of teams that make that kind of leap as the season goes on. And I think scheduling this game for a lot of reasons was important for the OU women's basketball program.
You heard it here first. Oklahoma will be involved in a buzzer beater in the national title game in Phoenix. That's what I heard from there. OU UMKC.
And they've hit plenty of buzzer beaters already.
That true. OU UMKC Wednesday night. If you're listening to this during the day Wednesday, be sure you're following Aber. If you're listening to this later, go to the website, OklahomaSoonersOnSI.com. Click the women's basketball tab, and you can get the full recap of that bad boy. They've got North Alabama on Friday in the field trip game. Godspeed to you, Ryan Aber. And then they're headed to Western Carolina on Sunday as Hoover, Carson, and I drive back from Tuscaloosa. I have no idea how to
make that leap, right? From Tuscaloosa to Western Carolina.
Yeah. We'll take the ride. I'll make that extra little bit, and I won't ever fly back, I guess. I don't know. I'll just like meander throughout until we make our way back. But we'll have all that fun stuff.
It's a funny story how the game came to play. Just OU had to scramble to get a game last year after a team backed out, and Western Carolina pretty much held all the cards and was able to say, "Hey, we'll come. You're gonna come to our place next year."
dig it. I dig it. So it should be good there. OklahomaSoonersOnSide.com. It's also signing day, so you rattled through it. Everybody's been announcing stuff all day long for it's the winter and spring sports, which means that, like, for instance, softball, they're about to sign the #1 class in the country. Those are not going to be freshmen for this upcoming. Yeah, shocking. They're not going to be freshmen for this upcoming softball season that will kick off in February, but it'll be next year's season. It's the 2025 signing day where they are freshmen in 2027. Just go to the website, OklahomaSoonersOnSide.com. We'll have all that gridded out, all that fun stuff. Indeed, as well as all of our Oklahoma, Alabama coverage all week long. If you missed anything from the Board of Regents, Brady Trantham and I were on top of it, all over that stuff. That stuff's all the way up there, OklahomaSoonersOnSI.com. Who have we missed anything before we depart and I get to a long day of laundry because of Scout the Dog?
No, I don't think we've missed anything. It's going to be it's Wednesday afternoon right now. We depart sometime Friday and midday probably, but between now and then, we're going to have a ton of content on the website.
Yeah, busy week. But that's what happens when we're in crossover season. Gentlemen, though, appreciate you for Hoover, for Carson, for Aber. Be sure, like we said, OklahomaSoonersOnSide.com, OklahomaSoonersOnSide.com. Always free. While you're there, sign up for the newsletter. It'll just shoot your story straight to your email. You don't have to go anywhere. And you can get all the best Oklahoma coverage. If you're on the YouTube and you want the videos, John Hoover Media is the place to be. As far as the podcast goes, we'll talk to you guys on the field in Tuscaloosa, and we'll just have like Aber, if you need something said, just text me and I can just read it for the people, and we can do some angry tweets, stuff like that. All that fun stuff. That'll be Saturday nights, and it should be up on Sunday. But for Aber, for Carson, for Hoop, I'm Ryan Chapman. We'll talk to you guys on Saturday.